This is a shakedown. Order up that beat just like it's takeout.
Okay, so welcome back to episode 2 of our podcast with Real Talk with Coach Allison G. Today's topic is going to be the role on perfectionism, especially when it comes to weight loss and achieving your health goals. So we're going to talk about the perfectionist mindset today. And I love this one because I think this is 90% of us are this type of person at one point or another. And while the perfectionist mindset can actually be a really good thing in some areas, especially in our personal career, it can be our biggest saboteur when it comes to trying to work on our own personal needs, because we're our worst critics. We are our absolute worst critics. And that perfectionist that lives inside of us can sometimes tear us down as easily as it wants us to succeed and go higher. So today's a fun one, because I bet you at some point in time, as I'm talking today, you are going to remember some time in your life when you had to be that perfectionist, or there was something that you were doing that you absolutely were, I don't know, it just kept you stuck because you weren't ready to go after it till you knew you could do it perfectly. And I'm going to share one of my stories with you too, because this is when I really realized that that perfectionist mindset existed. I didn't believe it. I was young and cocky until I had to do something that showed me otherwise. So I'll share that with you, not a problem. What exactly is perfectionism? Well, I'm going to read you the definition of perfectionism based on the Oxford Dictionary, which is the refusal to accept any standard short of perfection. Easy enough. But it's actually deeper than that, because it's in that word refusal to accept, or words, refusal to accept, meaning that we're just not going to do it if we can't do it right. Why can it affect you in your health goals when it comes to weight loss? Okay, so I've dealt now in my career, I've lost count of how many people I've actually worked with. But one of the things that usually caused people to fall off the wagon was the first 3 days they were slaying it. They were doing great. They were following everything that they needed to do. They took things out of their eating programs and protocols because they knew that they were on their road to doing something great. And they were going to feel better, and they had the promises of all these wonderful things, and they were on it. They were on it, no doubt. And then the work conference came up, and they weren't prepared. And then the slice of pizza was in front of them. And then they had that slice of pizza because they didn't have anything else. And then guess what? The rest of the day went to hell in a handbag. It was gone. I'm not gonna lie. They said, fuck it. Yeah, I said that. And so we joke, right? They chucked it in the fuck it bucket. And the rest of the day was gone. And because the rest of the day was gone, they woke up the next day really frustrated. They couldn't get their mindset back onto it. And then all of a sudden, I can't do this anymore. And my favorite is, this doesn't work for me. Okay? So that perfectionist mindset said that because I couldn't do it exactly like I wanted to do it, it doesn't work. Well, that's bullshit, right? Of course it works. You stopped working it. And that's what happens, right? That's what that perfectionist does. It's why it becomes one of our biggest saboteurs, because it leads us down a road of thinking that it's not feasible, possible, or can be done because we couldn't do it exactly. So I started thinking about all the things we are in tune in life to, right? All those things that teach us this black and white philosophy. Think about the words we use in every day. If I walk into a room, I flip on a light. And then when I walk out, I flip off. Unless you're like my children who leave lights on all over the house because that's what they do. But there is on, there is off. And just what I said, look at the yin and yang symbol. It's black and it's white. Even though that's supposed to mean balance, right, and harmony, it's black and white. So we have in and out. We have on and off. But then when it comes to food, don't we classify it as good and bad, right? We have good food, we have bad food. And the minute that I touch the bad food, it's done. So we have this way of thinking, or this unrealistic way of thinking, that it has to be one way or the other. And so this year, I always challenged my clients to think about something called the float, right? Think about sink or swim. That was another, like, one or the other. You're either going to sink or you're going to swim. Well, that's not true, right? Because if I'm on a boat and I'm out there in the middle of the sea, and if I'm on a good friend's boat who is worried about the safety and well-being of all of those people that are on the boat with them, they probably have a life vest or they have a swim ring. So if I fell off the boat, because I'm just that uncoordinated, so, right, like, I fell off the boat. If I fell off the boat, my first instinct is to paddle, right? I'm going to try to swim back to the boat. First instinct, I'm going to swim. If I don't know how, I might sink. But what about the float? Were we not taught as little kids to float on your back or even doggy paddle? And hopefully I've got a good enough friend on that boat who really wasn't trying to make me fall off the boat, that they're going to throw me something to come to my rescue. That's the gray area that we're missing. That's the float. The float is just take a moment, take a pause, figure out what it is that you're trying to do without scrambling, and float. And then when you feel strong enough, you can swim. But if you use all of your energy at one moment, and let's say I decided to swim, but now that boat is like 5 miles away, I'm not that good of a swimmer, I might sink. So we have to be really careful of the parameters that we put on ourselves about how we're viewing whatever journey what we're on. Fear of failure is another reason why perfectionism is so devastating, right? But there's two sides to that, right? Because we're talking about two sides. We're talking about sink and swim, on and off, good and bad. But when we're talking about fear of failure, there's also fear of success. So fear of failure is if I get it wrong. What if I don't do it well? What if I can't do it the way that I envision doing it? And so we think about this whole negative side of stuff, like this fear of failure. What I've come across with people while I've worked with them is the fear of success. Because what if you did succeed? What if you actually did the thing that you thought was impossible and you did it? Then what? What do you have to bitch about? Right? So let's just say I want to lose 10 pounds. And this is something people come in, and one of the first things we ask them is their why, and we talk about, what are their goals, and the first thing they come up with is this number, this magical number. I'm gonna lose 10 pounds. Always. I have no idea why this number is so important, because I'm gonna be honest with you. And I ask this to my clients. I don't know anyone who's come up to you and said, oh my God, you look 173.2 pounds today. I've never seen that. I've never seen that. I have never had anyone identify another person by their number. So guys, that's really ridiculous, right? Like, I don't know why there's this, I want a 10-pound goal as if it's magical. I want to weigh 150, 140, 120 because that's when I felt the best in my life. Well, I guarantee you that was not because of the number you were at. It really wasn't. It had nothing to do with that. There's no magical number that says you're at a good place. Maybe at that point in time, you felt your best because things were going well in your life. You were happy. Maybe you were about to get married. Maybe you graduated from college. Maybe you got your first great job. Maybe you just loved the friends you were hanging out with and you were living life. That had nothing to do with how much you weighed. Now, where weight does come in is whether or not we're in that healthy realm or are we unhealthy, right? Is it starting to cause a problem in your everyday functioning? Do you have to buy 2 airplane seats? I mean, like, realistically, like, that's a problem. Or it's just money that I choose not to spend. But if I can't bend over to tie my shoe, if you're older and you've got grandchildren and you want to run and play, I mean, my God, I just want to be able to walk around the block or lift weights or do things that I'm not in pain with. If you are in danger of medications because you just haven't been paying attention, those are serious things, right? Those are things where we need to take, maybe that number is just that stepping stone, that if I lose 5 pounds or I lose 10 pounds, maybe my medication can change. Because usually with blood pressure, about 10 pounds is where things start to happen. So that's where that number or that goal may be. But if we succeed and we set out to do, I don't have a bitch or a complaint or a wall left that I can't conquer. So I'm going to give you 2 instances for me, right? So this idea of perfectionist. When I decided to go back to school for nutrition, I've already done all my school. I was working as a practice administrator in medical offices. I was setting up businesses for doctors and helping them grow. And that was my jam. I was a business marketing and it was awesome. And then I loved this field. I fell in love with it because I went through my own journey with it. And I thought, wow, this is life-changing. I need to share this with everyone because I love to talk clearly. But when I had to send my test in, I took my exam. I sat for that AANC board. I had that exam. I held off turning in that test probably for about 6 months because I needed to make sure every answer was perfect because I needed an A+. I needed an A+. I had to have an A+. It was so stupid because I wasted 6 months just checking and rechecking things, making sure I was going to get an A+. And I had someone turn around to me, a very good friend, who said to me, "When was the last time you asked anyone in college what grade point average they got when they graduated with their degree?" That's true. I never thought about that. Right? I didn't ask the person with the physical therapy degree, what was your grade point average when you graduated? So who was going to care if I got a B versus an A on my board exam? Oh, okay. So now clearly I just wasted a lot of time because I was afraid of what if I failed, when truly I could have already been succeeding because of that. Okay. So then the second one comes with, I decided to take on running a marathon. Now, I hate running. I do. I'm not gonna lie. I know I have a lot of friends who are runners. It is just not my thing. I do not like running, and now my knee can't take running anyways, but I don't like to run. I like sleeping. I cannot get up at 3, 4 in the morning and click off the alarm, put on my running shoes and go. That's just not me. I'm sorry. If it's you, that's awesome, and I praise you because that's just not me. I do like my sleep. I'm the one who will run to hit the snooze button like 4 or 5 times. But I decided to take on running a marathon because my why was bigger than my reason not to. I know I'm not a runner. I was out of shape at the time. My father had just died, and I just needed some place to put my emotions. I needed something to do because I felt out of control. And the perfectionist in me had to have everything in order, and it wasn't. My world just shattered. And so I found a way to focus my attention and energy into a totally different purpose that actually required me to run and walk at the same time, because I did not run an entire marathon. And most people who do that do not run the entire marathon unless you've been a runner your whole life. So I would do run walk. And it was something I knew in a million years that I would never, ever think that I would do. I never grew up thinking this is what I was going to do. It was never a goal for me that I was going to do. It was simply a way to take my energy and attention away from the bad and channel it into something else. And I got up at 3 and 4 in the morning, and I went down to Fort Lauderdale Beach, and I walked with my group of friends, and we would run and we would walk, and I met new friends and met new people, and I would hit those bridges, and I wore out at least 6 pairs of shoes. And then in January, I did my first marathon. I did the Disney Marathon with Team in Training. And the whole time I kept thinking, okay, I'm gonna do this perfectly. And then I learned about the sweeper. And I don't know if you've never run a marathon before, there's a thing called the sweeper. And if you don't keep a certain mile tempo, the sweeper's gonna come and take you off the track. Now, mind you, I have this mind that, like, I swear runs cartoons in my head for all things all the time. And if you know that about me, you'll know that in my head, this big giant sweeper dump truck was coming through and sweeping all the people off the course. And I was terrified. I had to get it right. I had to be perfect. And so you train and you train and you train and you worry about the little sweeper in your head, because now my question became, what if I don't succeed? What if I fail? Right? And so at one point, I wanted to quit. 18 miles in, and thank you for going with me on my little journey here. 18 miles in, I am on the boardwalk in Disney. It is 39 degrees. It was raining. And that particular mileage stop wasn't a drink of water. It wasn't a goo pack to keep me going. It wasn't watermelon slice or oranges. It was a wet sponge. It was a wet sponge. And in that moment, I just looked at the person who handed it to me and thought, you know what? Like, it's raining, it's cold, I'm hallucinating, I'm hitting a wall, and you're handing me a wet sponge. And I wanted to give up. In that moment, I wanted to give up until I got a phone call from my little nephew. At that time, I think he couldn't have been more than 5 or 6, maybe a little bit older, telling me how proud my dad would be of me doing this marathon. And all of a sudden, that perfectionist mindset went right out the window because I wasn't going to accomplish it the way I envisioned. I wasn't going to see it through the way I always thought and trained for. I was going to get it done because that was my why. So what does that mean? Why did I tell you that story? Because part of being a perfectionist and understanding that it sabotages you is understanding what are some ways to get away from that, right? How do I stop that from sabotaging me? And one of those is remembering your why. Why did you start whatever it is that you're wanting to do? If it was to lose 10 pounds, why? Was there an event coming up? Was there a reason for your health? If you wanted to travel to Europe, why? Why did I want to run the marathon? Because I wanted to honor my dad. It wasn't about getting the best time. It wasn't about setting an unrealistic goal. It wasn't about what if I couldn't do it. It was about I needed to honor him. And so all of a sudden that perfectionist mindset went right out the window because I was able to rechannel back to my why. And that comes to one of the other things. How do we get away from it, right? Sometimes it's just asking yourself if you actually have realistic goals. Now, 26.2 was not a realistic goal for me. I did it. I'm so proud of myself. Yay. But maybe it isn't to run a marathon. Maybe it's to do a 5K. Learning lesson. Because will I ever do a marathon again? No. Clearly not. Because the sweeper for sure would get me. But it would be to do a 5K. Because it's about starting and finishing. And maybe the 5K is what I need to remind myself that if I start something, I can finish it. Maybe it's about then leading up to a half, 13.1, or a 10K. There's always ways to assess what your goals are. So one of the things that I'm going to tell you to do when you start thinking about doing the impossible, right? And I tell my clients this, let's say it is weight loss, and you're saying about, I want to lose 10 pounds. Well, 10 pounds to someone who weighs 300 and 10 pounds to someone who weighs 150 are very different, and they're very different journeys. And one's going to go a lot faster than the other one. So we need to be prepared for failure and for success on both ends. But set a realistic goal. Maybe it's losing the first pound, because do y'all know how hard it is to lose 1 pound? You have to find a way to burn or get rid of 3,500 excess calories in a week. That's 500 calories a day. And if you are a Starbucks lover, that is 1 Frappuccino. If you're going out to the bar, that is 1 margarita. It's really easy to consume extra. It is really hard to take it away. So before we dream about 10 pounds, dream about 1 and pat yourself on the back for 1. The other thing we want to do is focus on the positives. Right? What did you do well? So instead of me beating myself up that my time wasn't that great or the thought that I actually wanted to quit, I had to start saying, you know what? Here's the positives. I got to mile 18. I did complete the marathon, but I had to remember in that moment, I got to mile 18. I was doing something right. No big sweeper took me out. If I go back to my education, I got that board certification. I ended up starting my own business when I didn't think it was possible to do that. I've met amazing people. I've worked with incredible individuals. So when we start getting down on ourselves or realizing that it's not going perfectly to plan, remember the positive things you've already achieved or the positive things you've already done. Most importantly, and the last goal that I want you to remember and take away with you, don't procrastinate. I am, or was, I'm not even gonna say am, I was the worst procrastinator in the world. And I used to believe and fooled myself into thinking I work well under pressure. But realistically, it just meant that I ran out of time and had to get it in. So I didn't work well under pressure. It probably wasn't my best work that I was sending. It just was I had to complete a deadline and get it so I could, when I needed to put my pedal to the metal, I could do it. So just be careful that you're setting realistic goals, that you're focusing on the positives. Don't put off something. Don't procrastinate. Again, if we're looking at trying to lose weight or get healthier, don't wait to figure out what you're going to do and what you're going to eat. Go in there and be planned. Be a Boy Scout, right? Don't we teach Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, like, Boy Scout, if you're out in the woods and you get lost, you know how to use a knot, you know how to use fire, you know how to do sticks. Like, you're prepared for the worst case scenario. We need to be prepared for the worst case scenario, whatever your goal is, because the worst is going to happen more than the best. Okay? That's that perfectionist mindset, because if it doesn't go according to the best plan, you're not going to do it. And I will promise you that something's going to happen along the way, and it will knock you off. And how will you recover? And lastly, don't surround yourself with negative people. There are people who want to see you fail all the time because they can't get it done. And the perfectionist mindset is going to buy into that and say, if I am not doing it exactly the way I need to do it, it's not going to happen. Social media is really big on this, because again, the perfectionist person is going to look at themselves compared to another person on social media who's presenting their best life and presenting their best way, and everything's amazing and everything is wonderful and blah, 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 blah. Look at my kitty and look at this. And honestly, like, I mean, look at all the best things. Very rarely do you see the girl who's crying and boogers are coming out of her nose and like you see her eyes all puffy. No, we're not seeing that. That's the truth. But when we start comparing ourselves against someone's controlled online content, we will feel bad about ourselves. And anything that we're setting out and trying to do, we're going to realize that we're not as perfect as what their life seems, and so therefore I must fail. And I don't want you to do that. I want you to kill it. I want you to go out there and be strong. I want you to be your best you. And you know what? Remember, even I make mistakes, right? Even the people that you look up to, the people that you want to grow from, we're human. We've all made mistakes. That's why this is real talk, right? So take home those points, find something positive in your day, make it work, and remember, set realistic goals and make them small, because a check mark on your checklist is like a warm hug. Your brain sees it the same way. So go out and find something to check off your list today. It has been amazing getting to talk to you, and I look forward to our next episode where we'll talk about a whole new mindset. So I'm excited. So thank you so much for being here with me and listening. And again, you can check us out at www.coachallisongold.com, or you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Coach Allison Gold. Until then, live your best.
Just the way you like it. The way you like it. So good, so fresh. Get up on your feet, this is a shakedown.